films have you helped get onto Netflix?
I believe it's 5 to date. Most of my films that have gone into Netflix have gone through distributors who then got into Netflix. But in terms of directly, I believe it's 5.
How about this year? I know we're early in the year.
Oh yeah, none this year.
None this year,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. What's the most recent film you got onto Netflix?
Most recent, I'm trying to think if there's something after Tinker that got onto Netflix. There's a film called a kind of lo-fi sci-fi film called Tinker. I believe that was the last one.
Was that the one where she was a personal assistant to an
No.
insane writer? Oh, okay, because that looked good.
No,
Not
Chase
sure.
Crawford was in it.
Okay. What are the advantages of a filmmaker getting their movie on Netflix?
Several things. If first of all, if you're beloved by Netflix and they want to bring you into the fold in terms of making films, one of the few companies that can just, say yes very quickly and finance your movie. There's a lot of things that come with that, but they're definitely, they've got a lot of money to spend on production. The bragging rights are pretty huge. I think that's what film, and it's a way some people consume movies very easily. Everybody doesn't mind paying the subscription fee. No one has to get out their wallet and rent it for $4. So you can tell the world about it, and everybody can watch it, fairly easily. So I think that's probably the 2 main reasons that filmmakers want to be on Netflix.
Do they have? Would you say their recommendations are one of the best in terms of giving you similar titles, so that your movie will be seen, by other moviegoers? Like if I'm clicking on one, then it's so well, sort of the algorithm is so personalized.
Yeah. I've seen. I think that. I don't think I've ever. So my films have been very indie, and not Netflix, produced, and so I think they're hard to find unless you're told about it. At the end of the day, and perhaps like in the case of Tinker, if you love indie film and sci-fi, I'm not sure even with all the content they have now if that film would show up unless you typed it in and found it that way. So I think it's still hard even to get visibility on Netflix with an indie unless you're something of theirs that got a lot more promotion than something they acquired from a distributor.
You think that was probably much different a few years back before they started producing their own content?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they used not to produce movies, so they, everything was other people's content, studio content, Disney movies, and no Netflix originals, at first. So, yeah, definitely a lot easier.
Any disadvantages
of being on Netflix? I depend on your expectations and what you want. I don't think so. They're usually paying a license fee for the right to do it, so you know what you're getting going in. It's a badge of honor these days to say you've got a film on Netflix. I think some clients, if they're staring at a minimal offer from Netflix versus someone who wanted to put the film in 10 theaters, they have to choose a path. And depending on what they want out of the film, they might choose the theatrical path because they just want that kind of treatment. But there have been some deals, like I currently negotiated a deal with a different streamer where we sold the streamer a pay window. They're going to take it. They're paying a license fee, and another distributor is going to come in and take all the other rights and assume that contract. So they're going to do the theatrical, do the transactional video, then it's going to go to that streamer that bought the film, and then go to other platforms later. and the same distributor was going to pay a lot less beforehand when they didn't know about the TV deal. So they got their cake and they eat it too, so to speak, because they got the, can't say the name yet, but the cable deal that they're getting, and they're getting someone to take it out on 10 screens theatrically. So that's a win-win in that case.
What are the pathways to getting a film on Netflix these days?
So there's pitching to the originals division to see if it's something they want to take on directly from the filmmaker, or you can be with a distributor who then, after they take it out on transactional VOD, will then try to pitch it to Netflix. At the same time, they might pitch HBO, Hulu, and other streamers to see if they want to take it, usually 90 to 120 days after the start of the transactional video window. So there's really two paths. There's either directly, we can sell it directly, or through a distributor as a window later on.
And can me as an individual just contact Netflix? Can I just send them a letter? And
my experience is not really. Just from, that's not to prohibit anybody from trying, or who knows if you've got the right moxie to get in the door, right? But my experience is that filmmakers that come to me who have tried have not been able to get someone to watch it.
So it's similar to what you were talking about with the need for a producer rep, in that some doors are closed,
Yeah.
some doors are open, maybe they shouldn't be, but the ones that are closed, sometimes there's reasons, and then you do, those might actually be the best ones to try to go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So if they know someone, or if the distributor that they've gone with has access, that's usually how it's done
Yeah.
for smaller
Yeah,
films?
exactly.
Okay. And do most distributors promise that, or they entertain it but they don't promise it?
Both. There's some distributors that say, there's some distributors that will say, yes, we're going to pitch it to Netflix and HBO, et cetera. That same distributor might also want a film, but say, hey, we want it, but we're probably not going to be able to make a deal with HBO or Netflix, if they're being honest. There are some distributors that, on the lower side of the spectrum, that don't even try because they don't have the relationships. There are smaller distributors that just can't, that take films out to the transactional VOD space and the advertising VOD space, but don't have the relationships to make a deal with Netflix or Hulu, et cetera. And then there are some distributors that kind of pretend they have the relationship and just say that they can pitch them and really can't.
How does an indie filmmaker get a Netflix original?
Well, so there's kind of two ways. One is if you've somehow managed to pitch it to Netflix and they want to make it with you, normally to get that pitch, you've got to be going in with someone who's made a film with them before. They and most Hollywood-based distributors and just don't have an open door policy for anybody to just come in and pitch anything. Most of them, including Netflix, make films with the production companies that are owned by stars or just producers that have been making films for a long time. And so your most likely path is getting involved with one of them, somehow getting them to look at your material and having them want to make it and take it in to get financing from Netflix. That's one way. The other way is to pitch it to Netflix, to the original department, have them like what you already made, and decide, hey, we'll turn it into an original.
It seems like they're taking a lot of, or they're making a lot of adaptations. Netflix, or at least the ones I've been watching are.
Yeah, they make all different kinds of content now. It's from reality to documentaries, and they analyze the metrics they have to see what their viewers want dictates, what they make, and who they make films with.
Yeah, I've suggested several films because they have this email thing that you can just put in. Would you like to, a title we don't have that you'd like to see? And
right.
Unfortunately, I haven't seen them up there, but I keep trying, and I have no personal investment in it. I just want to see it on there. But Do you ever recommend a filmmaker go with just a strict Netflix deal rather than theatrical?
Um, you know, I'm usually following the lead of the filmmaker on that and trying to see what their goals are and trying to advise them according to what they want. And I can point out, depending on what's being offered, what I subjectively think is the best math monetarily, as in terms of maximizing the value, what's the best bet. But if you want a certain kind of exposure, what's the other mean? Because there's all levels of theatrical, from 1 screen to 10 screens to 100 screens. So it kind of depends on what's being proffered, and kind of depends on what I think the filmmaker wants out of it at the end of the day.
When you say exposure, are they also considering future projects down the line, getting their name out there? Maybe is more important than getting someone to see movie A. It's about maybe movie B or C that's coming.
Yeah, I find most filmmakers have competing goals that aren't necessarily at odds with each other, but many of them will say, well, it's most important for me to get my money back for my investors, but it's also just as important for me to get my next project off the ground. So they've really declared that they've got two most important things, at the end of the day. I'd say, and then it kind of depends, because there are some people who have financed their own thing, so they definitely have both things in mind. There are some people I'm dealing with where there's an executive producer that I never meet, but they're in control of the property, and they're much more concerned about, that going on to the next thing than maybe their executive producer is. So, and then I get sometimes the executive producer is part of the discussion, so they're having to pay attention to that person, and really the goal is monetization. I find that, though, usually the best situation for exposure matches the best path for monetization. Is usually not. It's pretty rare to have that Netflix offer versus semi-wide theatrical, where you think, wow, the money's kind of equal, the exposure's kind of equal. It's usually someone is putting up something that's a lot better than everybody else.